The Middle Ages, in the middle of what, as I said? What does it mean to be ancient? What does it mean to be modern? Well, these are concepts that we can think of from our contemporary perspective, but at that time, they conceived themselves as different in many ways. We have to remember human identity was conceived of as something that had a strong link with a superior force, a spirituality, namely God or some kind of God or some kind of supreme being that decided for us, that could help us to explain ourselves, why we're here, why there is an earthquake, a drought, a forest, fire. These kind of events that are beyond the control of human beings were usually explained with the idea of a God. So human beings at that time in ancient societies tend to rely on the existence of this superior entity. Their identity themselves was linked to that God or spirit. Today, we're more secular, we're more skeptical. We don't necessarily trust that everything can be explained through God or a superior entity that we cannot see. So, in antiquity, also called the pre-modern period, our trust relied on God. Our explanation of the world, of the events, of life, relied on something exterior to humans. That is the main difference between the pre-modern period and the modern period. But things don't change so suddenly. In order to understand the process, the change between the pre-modern and the modern period, there is a series of centuries that are called the Middle Ages that help us explain from a contemporary perspective precisely what we have come to be today. What we see now is an engraving of a medieval battle. People are fighting for religious reasons. People are killing each other because they believe that they are right, that God is behind them. So they fought among themselves and they fought against other religions too. We're going to see later that the Crusades can be explained both from a religious, cultural point of view and an economic and political point of view. Europe was not as we know it today. There was no such thing as France, Spain, Italy, Hungary, Poland, countries that are determined by their borders, which are more or less recent, only a couple of centuries or a few decades in some cases. Europe was a vast territory that was so heterogeneous, with many languages, many kinds of people, but more or less after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, with the invasion of the Vandals and the barbarians from the north, the reality was that most of these peoples had to congregate themselves in kingdoms. The political system was usually the monarchy, the prevalent one. We have to remember Charlemagne, the most important emperor around the 8th century in France, who unified good part of the western side of Europe and contained the Muslim invasion that was coming from Spain. In the 8th century, Spain was taken by the Muslims coming from northern Africa, and they remained in Spain for almost 8 centuries. The rest of Europe was in constant fear of a Muslim invasion. These kingdoms from northern Africa and near Asia were very powerful, very developed, very sophisticated also. They have left wonderful tracks of their presence in Spain, particularly in the region of Andalusia. The rest of Europe had to follow a different course. The kingdoms were multiple. They appeared and disappeared. But in most cases, they were composed by three different realms, states of realms. The nobles, the clergymen, and the peasants. This is the general reality of the Middle Ages in Europe, and we're going to go on how this social composition, which was usually involved in wars, hunger, epidemics, etc., came to be later the beginning of the modern period.